I have 4 words for you: beat down, domination, physical, complete. Those are 4 words I would use to describe Purdue's 44-19 win over Illinois on Saturday. This is the Behind the Rails of Purdue Football podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Brice Vance. Man, what a game. I mean, that was a game that Purdue needed. They needed it in the worst way. It felt like it was a game where they played at a really high level, both sides of the ball. They did some good things on all 3 phases of the game, and just took it to an Illinois team that has a lot of major flaws, but they took care of business. TCB took care of business. And you know who else takes care of business? That's Bet Online. Football is back. Purdue is back in a big way. And Bet Online is your number one information source for all your sports wagering info, all the up to the minute stats, news, scores, matchup breakdowns, get the latest game odds, spreads, totals from the NFL to college football right at your fingertips with Bet Online's real-time updates with stats, news, and odds. From week 5, moving on now to the college football playoff and to all the way to the Super Bowl, all the way up in February. BetOnline gives you access to the best football promotions contest available anywhere online. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Remember to use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, BELIEVE, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. And where I want to start with this game is just some important stats that stuck out to me. And I think those stats really made a difference. And some of the stats that I think we've talked about in the past with how this team has really come up on the other end of some of these stats. Third down, huge all game long, especially for that defense. Illinois was 2 of 13, and both of those third down conversions came like late in the fourth quarter when the game was already out of hand. Purdue on the other side was 8 of 13, and that's a huge difference for this team, especially from where they have been playing and really haven't been converting on third down, and they just have made it difficult on themselves. This is the 7th time out of the last 8 years that they've won the Cannon Trophy, and I think it goes back even further than that of how many they've won in a span of a certain amount of time. They've won quite a few over the last 2 decades. So Illinois had 9 penalties for 83 yards. Purdue had 3, just 3 penalties. They were all 5-yard penalties, so 15 yards of penalty yardage. So they cleaned a lot of things up. They did really some good things execution-wise, like we talked about on third down. And I think some of those changes can be how the coaching staff kind of approached this game. And the biggest thing that I noticed, and it was confirmed after the game, was Ryan Walters, former defensive coordinator for the Illini, ended up calling the defense. If you did not see this in the post-game press conference, Ryan Walters did confirm that he did call the defense on Saturday for Purdue. I think that made a huge difference. This defense was aggressive, all over the place, attacking, and really getting after Luke Altmaier, really shutting down lanes for any of the running backs that Illinois used. They really could not get going up front, and that offensive line got beat down even more. I think Luke Getsy, had to leave the game twice. There was another offensive lineman that ended up going down as well for Illinois. So an offensive line that was already depleted and not performing very well. Had two guys, in and out, rotation type of guys that were just not living up to expectation for Illinois. Graham Harrell on the offensive side, he was actually up in the booth, in the coach's booth, not down on the field like he has been. Seth Dagey, the tight ends coach, was down on the floor, down on the field. So I think that made somewhat of a difference. I don't know if that's going to be the plan going forward. I would expect Harrell to probably be in the press box for maybe the rest of the year. And maybe Walters, maybe this was just a one time thing because he knew Illinois and kind of knew what they were going to do offensively. We'll see how that does going forward. I think he might just is putting his hands into the defense a little bit more. And I think this was an important week for that. And I think it was, I think Walters kind of sensed that he needed to do something just because this defense is not performing up to the level, especially in the back end. And you had so many guys step up today. You had Marquise Wilson make a couple plays. You had Yanni Karloftis, huge game with OC Brothers being out today. You had Marcavius Brown, who comes up with the strip sack and is recovered in the end zone for the touchdown. He was all over the place, flying. His closing speed is just tremendous, and I thought that Nick Scorton, Kadrian Jenkins, if those two guys, either one of them, I think both of them should at this point. If they don't get some sort of all Big Ten recognition, where they're honorable mention at the very least, I know some of the bigger programs or maybe some of the better overall defensive units are going to get maybe a little bit more recognition, and this defense is nowhere on the level of an Ohio State, a Michigan, or an Iowa at this point. But I would just like to see, because those guys are just in the backfield constantly harassing quarterbacks. I think that they're playing at a really high level, and they're just making plays constantly. It feels like at least once a drive, once every other drive, they're in the backfield making a tackle, making a play. And those two guys are playing at a really high level. And I think that's really what helped today and put a lot of pressure on Luke Altmaier. And he really could not do anything except for the connection with him and Isaiah Williams, which I talked about in the preview. And in that third quarter, and we'll talk about that third quarter more specifically here in a moment. But in that third quarter, Isaiah Williams did nothing. He had two big catches in the fourth quarter after having about 40 yards in that first half. I think four catches, maybe four to six catches, maybe for about 4 catches for 60 yards. That's what it was. Had my fours and the sixes mixed up there. But after in that third quarter, he really didn't have anything. And then he had a couple of big receptions in garbage time that really didn't matter. So I thought that this team played well on both sides of the ball. And I think that starts up front. To steal a line from David Pollock, who I really enjoyed on College Game Day, still enjoy some of his content that he puts out on social media. It starts up front, and Purdue dominated up front for large stretches of this game on both sides. The offensive line held up well against Keith Randolph Jr. and Johnny Newton. Yes, they each made a couple of plays, but overall, there was really not a whole lot that those guys were doing to wreak havoc. Dylan Rosiak, he made a couple of plays from his linebacker spot. I barely heard Gabe Yaka's name, and he's one of their guys that flies all over the place. And I didn't hear from him except for one time in, I think, the fourth quarter when I finally heard his name. And I was thinking, man, that's the first time I think I've heard his name in a long time, if not the entire game. So I thought the offensive line did a tremendous job opening up running lanes, moving back the front seven of Illinois, and really gave Hudson Card some time to throw. And he made some beautiful throws on Saturday to Deion Burks, the touchdown pass to Garrett Miller. I from If we're gonna talk favorite plays from this game, yes, it could be the Marcavius Brown strip sack that turns into a touchdown recovered in the end zone. That one, but just the execution part for me, with Hudson Card stepping up, stepping into that throw, the route run by Garrett Miller where he gets behind the secondary. Card has to throw a perfect ball over a couple of defenders, and it's just a beautiful play that scores the touchdown that I think it extends the lead for Purdue in that second half. But this this game you have to feel happy about overall because you saw this team play up to the level it's capable of on both sides. And I thought that this signifies what this team can do going forward, even starting next week. And we'll end the show with what I think this win means for this team. But I thought starting off that it got off to a little bit of a rocky start. It was 3-6, I think, after the first quarter. The only touchdown was the strip sack, and the offense kind of took a beat to get going. But once they started to mix in the pass and the run game, and I thought the play calling, and I've criticized Graham Harrell, a few times here on this show, and I thought he did a good job of mixing up the running calls and the pass, and the offensive line was getting push up front. And I thought that this team was moving the ball very well, efficiently, playing at a very good pace, a good tempo, not really trying to get up and hurry and call the next play as soon and run the next play as soon as possible. But the tempo was there. It really felt like Illinois was on its heels all game long and really didn't have an answer for anything that Purdue wanted to do. And Purdue didn't rack up a ton of yardage. I mean, granted, one of their touchdowns came on a turnover, but I don't even know if they reached a 400 yard. They came close to around 400 yards of total offense, which is kind of what they've been averaging. And they gave up, 400 yards to Illinois, but it was about finishing drives, which Purdue did today, and Illinois just could not get off the field or stay on the field on when they were on offense. And Purdue, Illinois' defense couldn't get off the field. So I thought just both sides of the ball played about as well as they have all season long. You had special teams I thought performed well, and it just felt like a team win that was a complete win and a win that Ryan Walters needed and gets his first Big Ten win. And I think that going through the game, kind of a game log style here, that it really got off to a slow start. The offensive line was kind of scuffling a little bit, struggling to pass protect early on, but they quickly fixed that in the second quarter, and from then on, we did see another Maccabee fumble, and there's something that's going on. It's struggling. I can't really tell with it. I don't know if it's because he's trying to extend the run every single time that he kind of loses his grip on the ball. With his, obviously his different style of running where his limbs are kind of all out there moving in different ways at times. But good thing you have Tyrone Tracy as well. And Tyrone Tracy might be, I know they're probably on the depth chart. They're going to be listed as, 1A, 1B with that or on the depth chart. But Tyrone Tracy is the guy right now. He's the one that's, not having the fumbling issues. He's making the good cuts. He's running with, purpose. And you saw even Dylan Downing get in the mix and have a touchdown run earlier. And I'm glad we got to see Tracy get in the end zone late in that game. And it feels like when they did that, when they allowed him to score to put Purdue up 44-19, 44 to maybe even 13 at the time, that it felt like that this was a statement for Tracy and the offense signaling like, all right, you may not be totally our guy, but I think if you look at the distribution of carries, I think that he's kind of putting some space in between him and Maccabee as he's the number one guy. And he's performed well. A guy who's changed position after transferring over from Iowa has done, I think, a tremendous job. I think he's fit in well. And I think he did struggle a little bit, picking up pass protections early on this season, but I think all of the running backs are improving on that. And I think that maybe that's an advantage where Maccabee has still over Tracy, and maybe he'll come along as the season goes. But I think he's definitely improving as a runner, and as a running back as a whole, doing a whole lot of different things because he can catch the ball out of the backfield, being a former wide receiver. But I think he definitely shined on Saturday and proved that he could be the number one back going forward. Doesn't mean they should go away from Maccabee at all. I think those two guys are still really dynamic runners, and you still have Dylan Downing as a power running back. So it was it was a good thing to see after the fumble, and Purdue went down the field so quickly, so quickly, and ended up scoring. Like, it was a big play to Isaiah Williams. He ends up staying in bounds and making a play that goes on for an extra like 15 yards, and then McCray pounds it in to the end zone rather quickly. I think it was like 3 or 4 plays. They were just moving down there right after that turnover, and it was a good thing though to see that this team responded right away. Purdue answered next drive. That was the touchdown run with Downing, 16-yard run. He finishes the drive, but they answered right away. And I thought that was a good response, a good response. And Purdue ends up tacking on a field goal going into halftime. I didn't love the end of half situation, the end of half play calling. I think it was like third and something, and they run kind of a fade. I think it was to Burks, and it just didn't end up working. Didn't the play was kind of I didn't like the play call. I didn't like the execution of it. It just and then you ended up settling for a field goal, and you had still I think like 30 seconds left or so in the first half, and all you needed was I think 5 yards, and you still had another 10 yards to get in the end zone. So you had plenty of space to work with, timeouts, and they just go for the end zone with like 30 seconds left, where I think they could have tried to at least go for the end zone. And I think that might be my only spot where I could really nitpick, is because I felt like they could have done more, added on to that lead, and put this game a little bit earlier than they did. But man, I I thought they still played very well because they ended at 3 sacks in the first half, 5 tackles for loss, and Illinois only had 1 sack, and Illinois at that time was still 0 for 6 on third down. I think they ended up going like 0 for 10, 0 for 11 before getting that first down, first down on third down, and they only had 1 point penalty in the first half. Purdue did, and they came out second half, and that was the drive that finished with the Miller touchdown. And we even saw Jaden Dixon-Veal, he get his first career catch. So starting to see a couple more guys get involved. I think it was kind of a quieter day from Yassine and Sheffield, but I still think obviously those guys are just really good weapons for this team. And you still have a plethora of weapons. And I think that's the good thing about this offense. If somebody's not having, a big day like Yassine has had in the past, and Deion Burks, has only has 2 to 3 catches, and that largely plays on what the defense is willing to give you and who they are willing to allow to have bigger days, as we saw with this game today. Obviously, I think Purdue was able to just run all over them, and it really opened up anybody, which is why I think Burks got more involved. Max Clare had a couple of catches, and I hope he is able to come back soon, as he left the game after taking a shot. So but you have Garrett Miller who's back and healthy. So I think that thank goodness you have him back and healthy. Otherwise, you might see a little bit of a drop off in tight end production. But I thought Miller finished that drive with beautiful route, great throw from Card, and it was great. It was a good start to the third quarter, and that kind of pushed this game into another, not a stratosphere, but just another level to where they have been. It almost ended up in disaster and allowing Illinois to get back into this game rather quickly, as Purdue was pinned inside their own 5, I think, and no, they were like around the 10, but Hudson Cards ended up taking a sack, and he lands in the end zone. So I thought it was going to be a safety at the moment, but referees ruled that his momentum kept him down around the 1. So that was the one of the things that stuck out. One of the plays where the offensive line maybe have gotten beat pretty badly on that play, and I think Illinois sent pressure on that play, really got back into the grill of Hudson Card. So you got lucky out there, you punted, but still Illinois wasn't able to do really anything. And it's credit to that front. You had Karloftis get a sack. I think you had Jenkins, Scorton was just all over the place. I think Emba and Langham, I think, played well. They didn't really hear a whole lot from them. Humpich was in there a lot more today, I think. I think he's played consistently, pretty well. I think you'd like to see him maybe make a few more plays and get in the backfield a little bit more. But overall, I thought the defense was just flying all over the place. And I think that's what you really want. And I think that's due to, in part, Ryan Walters calling this defense and kind of, giving them the tools to say, just go out there and go. Don't stop thinking. And I think that's why at times, sometimes this defense looks a little slow, and why I've, maybe criticized Cam Allen just maybe a little bit too much, that he looks slow and maybe he's just out there thinking too much. And I get it. He's, in a spot that, maybe he's not right for or fit for at the moment, but the defense, and Cam Allen was almost had a pick today. They almost picked off, I think it was Williams, and he cut off a route, and they were speculating on the broadcast maybe it was a little early, but I thought he played it well, perfectly timed it, came in there, broke up the pass, and this defense played probably its best quarter in that third quarter, and it was just a defense that was flying all over the place and making plays near the line of scrimmage, not allowing any big plays to go. And I thought so many guys played at a really high level today. Snoozy Kane, sometimes it feels like I forget to mention him sometimes. Dylan Thieneman played well also, but Snoozy Kane, and they mentioned it on the broadcast. I think Michael Robinson was the color guy, and he mentioned that sometimes Snoozy Kane playing in the box safety, that he can kind of be unblocked sometimes, and he gets that free run at the running back, and he came up quite a few times today and just made that thumper type play where you just come up and just boom, put your shoulder into him and stop any momentum that the running back might have, and just create all sorts of havoc. And that's one thing that this Purdue defense has done, I think, at least a good job of this year is creating havoc and creating turnovers. And I think they've turned the team over in at least 4 out of the 5 games. I can't remember if they had a turnover off the top of my head right now against Wisconsin. I want to say they didn't, but I can't exactly remember right now. So they gave up the score late, but it was kind of out of reach at that point. And Purdue drove down, or Illinois drove down the field once again after Purdue scored with the Tracy touchdown, but had backups in, and it was just kind of meaningless at garbage time at that point. What does this mean moving forward? I think it gives, at least in the short term, in the week that we have coming up this week, I think it improves your chances or gives you at least another notch of hope. Maybe you were at a belief of like out of 10, maybe like 3 to 4 of that you can go on into Iowa City and win. But now you're maybe at like a 5 or a 6 that you can go out there and win it. And if I tell you that Cade McNamara left the Michigan State game on Saturday and then didn't return, I don't think he played the entire second half, but they still ended up beating Michigan State 26-16 in a low scoring game. If he's not the quarterback, does that give your hope meter up to a 7 that you can go out there and win? Gone out there and won before and recently. I just think, and we'll get into the preview coming up on Thursday, but I just think that this is a game, and I predicted it before the year when we did our schedule predictions, that this is a game that they can win. I predicted that they will win. And I think that if you can go out there and score 31 points, 28 points, maybe, that's a game you can win. A game you can be in. Because this Iowa offense is not good. Not good at all. And I know even against bad defenses, even against a bad Michigan State defense, Iowa still only put up 26 points. And there were chants of fire Brian Ferentz, the offensive coordinator, Kirk Ferentz's son, the OC. And there were the chants in the stadium at Iowa on Saturday. And it feels like a very tenuous situation out there in Iowa, at least on the offensive side of the ball. And the receivers aren't involved a ton. A lot of tight end, a lot of running the ball, which I think favors Purdue. If they can perform how they have against running backs so far and not running quarterbacks, and even that has improved over the course of the last couple of weeks after just getting absolutely torched by Garrett Schrader. Tanner Mordecai, he had a run or two. I think he ended up scoring on one. But Luke Altmaier, he kept it on the first play from scrimmage today. And I think after that, though, really didn't have that many big runs or break off a ton of runs that went for more than 15 yards. He might have had a one more. But it still feels like they shut down most of those running lanes, especially when it mattered in the second quarter, the third quarter, and even the fourth quarter. They kind of tightened up after that first quarter when he broke off maybe a couple of his bigger runs on the day. But going forward, I think you have to feel more confident than you did going into this game. I still had some people thinking that I don't think we're going to win today before the game when I put out my final score prediction. And I just thought that this is a game that Purdue could win. Watching Illinois, they just didn't really move the ball that well offensively. Not a lot of big stuff deep downfield, and I think that plays into Purdue's defense. And I think that we can kind of translate that into Iowa's offense. Not a big play type of offense, kind of a 3 yards in a cloud of dust type offense that's just going to try to grind you to death. And I think that really favors Purdue and how they want to play defensively. And especially if Ryan Walters is still calling the defense, I think that even favors them even a little bit more. I'm interested to see what the line is on that game. I would anticipate Iowa being favored, but not by much. Not by much. So I'm excited to preview that game because I think I'm gonna do more research on the Hawkeyes. Probably gonna watch a little bit more than I want to with Iowa. Maybe not even watch the Penn State game where they got shut out and had 4 first downs. If you haven't watched any Iowa football so far, I'm gonna save you the time. Okay, and we'll talk about it on Thursday because this Iowa team, and I've only caught glimpses of them from afar, and I did watch all of that Penn State game. It was on my second TV that I was watching that night, and brutal. It's brutal. If you can get after the quarterback, if you can slow down the run game, you give yourself a chance. And with the way the offense is performed for Purdue, I think they have a chance. We'll talk more about that on Thursday. Make sure you have subscribed to the channel. We're getting more subscribers every day. That helps grow the audience. Make sure you like and comment on the video. To those that have been doing so far, I thank you so much. Keep commenting. Add more people to the comments. Keep subscribing to the show. Follow the show. Subscribe. Do all that stuff. Follow me on social media if you would like to. But until Thursday, when we have the preview show, I've been your host, Brice Vance. This has been another edition of Behind the Rails of Purdue Football on the Believe Network, presented by Bet Online. I will see you guys on Thursday.